God showed me something, and I'm just going to be honest, it's a 2-hour message, and I got about 15 minutes. So y'all are going to have to fill in some of the dots for yourself. I can't do it all. I don't have time. Jeff told me he's keeping the watch on me. So we're going to try this. God showed me that in the Old Testament, that God gave us kings and judges and the law. And mankind, humans, were held by it, but we could not live up to it. And there was an end to that day that came. If you'll notice, between the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's 400 years of darkness. A time when God did not speak to humanity. Darkness. And then we find Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. A new beginning. Let's read our scripture in John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through Him, and without Him nothing was made that was made. In Him was life, and life was the light of men. And the light shines into the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. This morning, we're going to talk about a sin that we're all guilty of. More y'all than me, for this purpose. No, I'm kidding. I'm just as guilty of it as anybody. Have you ever wondered why they were three in the beginning? The Bible said that God spoke, so you got God. And the Spirit of God, you got the Spirit, moved upon the face of the waters. And then you've got Christ when He said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. There was a Trinity even in the beginning, but there was only one. One of the greatest mysteries of creation or Christianity is we serve a triune God. Jesus, and like I said, this is going to be scattered. Y'all just going to have to put it together. The Old Testament was great for a season, and then it ended. The dark years were a time when God was getting ready to do something miraculous. God was getting ready to take on flesh and dwell among humanity. And then you have the birth of Christ. So in order for something to be born over here, there had to be something that had to be fulfilled and completed and or died over here. And there was a space of time in between that of preparation to build a hunger and a thirst for something brand new. You say, Brother Mark, a new beginning, that's a January 1st message. Well, this year is a February, 14th message. I want you to know that I've heard about Robin Scott. I'm sick of hearing about that little midget. He's got the same head that I've got. Here, does that work better for you? I've heard about Terry Bentley. And he's up here and a lot skinnier. Bigger at one time, but skinnier now. And I've heard about the years past. Through COVID, we tried to figure out how we done the things that we used to do in a brand new world, and we realized that we tried our best to do Feed My Sheep in this building, where 200 or 300 people come together and do that, and we tried our best, because we don't want to let go of the past. Brother Mark, we want to keep that. That was great. And we had 8 people sign up for it. It forced us to turn loose and let something die from last year. That's it. It may come forth next year. It may come forth this year. But for 2020, we had to let something old pass away, not because we didn't want to, we couldn't. Jim and Barbara wanted to go on a mission trip. Others wanted to go on a mission trip. Because we've always done that. We've done it for years. And we had to let it die, kind of like the Old Testament. We can't do it. They won't let us in. It's not the fact that we don't want to. We can't. It's not possible unless we sprout wings, like Robin Scott, and fly over there ourselves. We can't do it. And then we went into the days and the weeks and the months of COVID. For some of us, some of the darkest days in our life. A time where you couldn't be with friends and family. A time you couldn't go to the nursing home and see mom, or to mom's house and see mom, or some of you grandparents. A time when you picked up a phone and you saw their faces in the phone and you talked to them through the phone, but you just longed to smell your grandmother's smell, your daddy's smell. You wanted to feel them. You wanted to hold them. You wanted to hug them, but you could not get close to them because you might be the very one that gives them something that would kill them. It was a very dark day. We watched our loved ones that were members of this church who had served faithfully their entire lives. We watched them get sick. We couldn't even go to the hospital. As their pastor, I call the hospital and say, the family says that they're dying. Please let me come in and just have prayer with them one last time. Brother Mark, we can't do that. They're dying anyway. Brother Mark, we can't do that. And I called nurses that I know and says, anyway, you slip me in the back door. This woman has been faithful. She deserves it. He deserves it. For their pastor to be with them. And I don't care if it's me or somebody else. They deserve to go out just prayed over and loved and appreciated. And now they're in this room all by themselves with nobody touching them. Nobody talking to them. Nobody telling them they loved them. Just waiting for the sound of the monitor to flatline. Guys, that's dark. That is so, so dark and so, so wrong. But after the darkness is usually when the light begins to shine. As I was coming through the S-curve speeding, as I usually do through there, I don't know, it's fun. I always wanted a go-kart, oversized go-kart. But God spoke and He said, humanity has sinned against God. And I said, Lord, I knew that. Paul told us that we're all sinners. I don't understand. And y'all, what would be a couple of 100 yards took me, it seemed like an hour to get from one end of it to the other, but yet it happened all at one time. And God said, my commandments, my 2 commandments that I gave you to live by, you can't live by them. Just as in the Old Testament. And I said, God, we've tried our best to live by it. To love God with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my strength, with all that I am. Lord, I've tried my best to love you. Guys, ain't nobody can live and love God with all their heart, with all their mind, with all their soul. They can't, but we sure do try. God has said it's not the first one I'm talking about. He said it's the second. Did you notice when Jesus said upon these 2 lays all the law? To love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And He said this, and the second is like the first. And He said to love thy neighbor as thyself. As God began to reveal that to me, I began to think about what it means to love our neighbor. I began to think about what it means for church. We pastored one church, and the bishop called me and said, "You're going to this church, and boy, you're going to have a fit." Not this one. He said, "This church should have been closed a long time ago." He said, "But we're going to send you there, then it's going to break out in revival or close." He said, "Either you're going to lead them to God, or you're going straight to hell with them." That's what he said, Bishop Willimon. And to be honest with you, I think the second was more true than the first. When I would get through preaching and say amen, it was just like somebody screamed bomb. Whew. There was no COVID. There was no sickness. They all hated one another. And they were proud that they hated one another, because they had hated their daddies and mamas before they'd hated the kids. I got the youth, the children, and this is back when sign language was going on, you know, Jesus, that type thing. I had some adults turn their back on the kids. Wouldn't even look at them. Would turn all the way around in a pew, and this is what the kids saw. They didn't like that in their church. And I said, "God, as far as I know, Gunnersville loves one another." And he said, "Gunnersville don't know one another." We go to Sunday schools for people that's been going to church together for 20 years, and we introduce each other because we ain't seen each other in 20 years. We show up at the supermarket, and I see some of you standing in line back to back, and y'all don't know one another, because they go to the 9 o'clock traditional service, these go to the 9 o'clock contemporary, and that one goes to 11 o'clock, and they've been going here, and unless they served on a board, they don't know one another. And then we have our little groups that we sit in, as you sit in your little groups, that we're real close to. But it's not just a church, it's humanity. It's all of us. I thought this morning, as God began to show me this, I began to think about when I was a child, we had the Mayo family reunions. Y'all remember those? When all the crazy cousins, if you didn't have a crazy cousin, you were probably the crazy cousin. And for some reason they'd jump on my back, and I hated them jumping on my back, but I would all give them a ride. I think they thought I was a horse. But anyway, you had those family reunions where everybody got together. And I thought that if COVID, if those dark days have shown me anything, it's we've lost the love and the tolerance for each other. During COVID, whether I was at home sick with COVID or whether we were just couldn't come to the office, I wore Netflix out. How many of us watched everything on Netflix? Yes. I'm watching stuff crying now. I'm watching Hallmark Channel just for something new. And they all end the same. I don't understand that. But I would study my Bible, and I would pray. And I would pray, and I would study my Bible. And I even watched a couple of televangelists, which I now am somehow. But anyway, I had all the Jesus that anybody could ever want, right? And I was miserable. I had all 36 translations of the Bible. I had channels on TV that I could watch Jesus and watch Jesus preached and Jesus taught. I could watch it in Hebrew, Aramaic, and anything else out there that you wanted. I had everything. From healers, people falling out, to people that were swinging incense with crowns on it. We had all the Jesus we could handle, but I was miserable because I had a longing to be with you. I thought to myself, Facebook has been one of the greatest and one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. I've got 1,200 friends, but don't have one. Everybody knows what's going on in my life. Anybody heard I've got a grandson? Yes. I love him. He's cuter than any of y'all's kids. To me. But y'all don't know him. Y'all have never played with him. You've never seen him. You just know of him. As far as you know, I love my wife. And I celebrate her birthday. Because it comes up on my Facebook. Tell me today's your wife's birthday. You need to say happy birthday. But yet, we could be in a different planet as far as that goes if we don't have a relationship with one another. God said the second one is likened to the first one, and it's to love our neighbor as ourselves. He goes on, I think it's James that talks about, he said, if you say that you love God and don't love your neighbor, he said, you're a liar. See, God created us. Golly, bum, I ain't got time to preach this. This is the introduction. God created us to be like Him, right? Was God by Himself? No. Jesus, God put on flesh and come down to this earth. Well, like it's a dark spot right here. The light ain't hitting me in the eyes. Where God come and put on flesh. Could Jesus have not lived and died by Himself and been the atonement for sin and fulfilled the Scripture that God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son? He could have. Why did He choose 12? Let me go further. Why did He choose 12 of the messed upest people you've ever seen in your life? He got the most educated fisherman. He got the most honest tax collector. And he gathered them around and he got aggravated with them. They're having an argument about which one of them is going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And Jesus said, have I been with y'all so long, you still don't get it? God created us to be in community. He created us to love people outside the doors of our own house. In 2021, some of you don't. I don't. Some of you do. We got a button in our car. We can't even hold a clicker now. It's built into our car. You mash a button, the door goes up. You pull the car inside it. You mash a button, the door goes down. And we hire somebody to cut our grass because we're afraid somebody might talk to us while we're on the mower. Go back to the Andy Griffin show. You remember after supper? Y'all kids watch it. It's good. After supper, they would go out on the porch and sit. Hey, Mabel, how are you? How's the kids? Good. Good to see you. Sometimes Andy would smoke. Sometimes he wouldn't. It's according to what year it was. Andy would play the guitar and they would sing and have conversations and talk about the day, talk about church. And people would come by and Goober and all of this bunch. But it was a family. It was a fantastic family. And I thought this morning that in the Facebook world, everybody is perfect because if you don't think just like I think, I'll give you a piece of my mind. Bunch of crazy. What's wrong with you? But in the world that Jesus created, He realized, and Paul realized, that we're all sinners. We're all broken. We're all messed up, some of us more than others. And I'm probably on the bottom scale of that. Chop it off right there. I've got to move. So as I was coming around the S-curve at the bank, I thought of something that's not a new thought. It's an old thought. Gunnersville went through a season of servants. We had some of the greatest servants. They would show up and make coffee for us every Sunday morning. They would lead this and they would lead that, and they were always the one cooking. They were always the one doing this and all that. And somewhere during the process of the last 3 or 4 years, those people got tired of serving. And so they quit serving. There's coffee out there. I made it. And it's just as good as anybody else's because I tore the pack open and poured it in the filter just like anybody else could do. So if servant has left the building, if that has left the building, After this darkness and after the completion of Terry and Robin and some of these great pastors y'all have had in the past, if all of that has kind of went by the wayside and now we've had this dark age, what's new? Have you ever heard of affinity groups? It's what they used to call them. Do you know, because you probably heard me tell it, I've got a 1995 Jeep Wrangler 4-wheel drive with a 4-inch lift kit, mudder tires on it, ready to go. Y'all know who I go 4-wheeling with? I don't even know where a dirt road is. Do y'all know where a dirt road is? Have any of y'all got I don't want to climb no rocks. And something about me, I don't want to die. I don't want to tear up my Jeep, and I don't want to go up a cliff just like this. But I'd like to go playing in the mud. I'd like to strap my grandson. I'd strap your kids, your grandkids. I'd like to see them with mud on their face. I'd love to have fun in the name of Jesus Christ. Church I pastored a few years ago bought me I've already told y'all this, bought me a membership to the country club. Bought me 87 cart rentals. I can go play golf anytime I want to. The second time I went, y'all, this may be stretching it, but it's my story. I can tell it any way I want to. About a 390, 500-yard drive. Probably closer to 2. But anyway, right down the middle of the fairway. And I turned around and went, put my clubs on the cart, put it back in the truck, never went back. You know how terrible it is to play golf by yourself? It ain't fun at all. Because you're the only one laughing as it let's skip this next hole and go around. You know how fun it is to have a Jeep that will do just about anything, but you just drive it up and down the road, changing gears. I got a brand new kayak, 12 foot long. Got whatever horsepower motor on it these are. I don't have nobody to go kayaking with. We went and eat at one of the church members' houses several weeks ago. She's Italian, and she makes her own noodles, and I wouldn't mention Mary's name to save my life. I don't like Italian food. I don't like it. Oh my gosh, that was good. And Patsy made the statement, she said, I'd give my right arm if she'd teach me how to do that. So, long story short, you're going to have to put the pieces together. This ain't poor pitiful Brother Mark. Don't have any friends. This is, what if we had a group that loved to go kayaking together? And in the middle of the water, we circled around 6 foot apart and done a devotion and talked about God. The friends that you've been inviting to church for the last 20 years that ain't coming, that didn't come and still are not coming, would they come and go kayaking with you? Because when they come and go kayaking, they get to meet Bill and Susan and Sarah and Tim and Joe, and they realize those are pretty, well, that one's a jerk. But anyway, rest of them are pretty nice people. And then they become friends with them, and the next thing you know, you might find them in a green chair sitting beside you one day. Cake decorating. What if you all chipped in? Okay, here you go. I don't know how to do anything. We can go on YouTube and put it on the screen. We'll learn how to do it together. We can do yoga class. You can do it by yourself, or you can do it with a group of people and motivate and cheer on each other. I bought a shopsmith. Anybody know what a shopsmith is? Anybody? Brent. He knows what a shopsmith. You know what I'd love to do on a shopsmith? Only thing I've done right now is plug it up. I don't know what to do with it. How many of you ever worked with wood? Do you realize that if a dad don't know how to work in a wood shop, he will not teach his son? because he don't know how. Do I know how to fish? You better believe it. I fished in every small pond there is, just about it in Etowah County. Do I know how to fish Lake Guntersville? Well, I can get on a boat and go out there and sit in the middle somewhere and throw a worm. I don't know how to fish Lake Guntersville. So what if we had a group that had a weekly or monthly tournament, that they met on such and such Saturday, and they all went out. I don't care if you bring the fish in, take a picture of them, put it on the scale. That way you can show everybody. And you're going to cheat because that's what fishermen do. But can we love God and learn how to love one another again? Because, guys, if you can't stand nobody here, you don't want to go to heaven. Because there's going to be people everywhere. I thought this morning that as God began to show me, band, come on if you ain't already up there. Where y'all at? So here's my thing. If you want to learn how to cook Spanish food, Mexican food, whatever, if you want, come on, you're making too much noise. If you want to learn how to crochet, if you want to learn how to quilt, remember we used to have quilting clubs? The grandmas would get together and quilt. We'd freeze to death. If you want to learn how to decorate cakes, if you want to learn how to be in a group of people that loves to kayak, if you want to be in a four-wheel drive group that stops somewhere on a hill with mud all over the place and sits down and thinks and prays and talks about God just for a few minutes, if you want to be in a group that does whatever, I don't care what you do as long as you leave the cooler at home. But think of how much fun we could have with one another. Think about how much fun Jesus, and it's not in the Bible, but don't you know that Jesus and the disciples sat around a fire somewhere going, Peter, 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 you crazy thing. What was you thinking? So that we can truly learn how to love God and learn how to love one another. There's people out there, you say, well, Brother Mark, there's people out there that you can't love. Yeah. You know why? Because they're broken. You ever tried to pet a dog that's been beat every day of its life? Won't you look past the brokenness and find the person that's in there and figure out how to love them? So I'm starting a four-wheel drive group. We're going to run up and down this highway out here with our Jeeps. I'm starting a kayak club. I'm starting a shopsmith club. I'm starting a golf club. What do you want to be a part of? I get off at 4:30 every day, and I go home and I sit down in a recliner and I watch television. Happiest day of my week is getting to go to Walmart. Where can God use us to create an environment and a group of people that learns how to love on one another and have a ball in the process? Something new is beginning in Guntersville. And I'm casting the vision that God cast before me. The question is, what are we going to do with it? We're going to spend the rest of this month searching that. Stand with us this morning.